Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to react to this fascinating interview with Murray Allan. He's a 20-year-old university student, but 3 years ago, while he was still a high school student, he got into a little disagreement with a school teacher, and all over him saying he believes there are only two genders. You wouldn't believe that in 2023, or at the time in 2019, a person could be expelled from school, all linking back to him saying that there are only two genders. You wouldn't have believed that that would even be disputed. Apparently, the teacher believed it was old-fashioned for the drop-down menu to only have two options. So let's take a look.
We have been talking about the teacher who called a girl despicable because she wouldn't accept that a classmate identified as a cat. But this is not an isolated incident, and in fact, teachers have been telling off pupils for telling the truth about this kind of stuff for quite a few years now. Here is a very quick clip of what happened in a Scottish school back in 2019.
How was what I was saying?
Because I was saying that what's wrong with the website is that there are more than one gender in this country.
That's your opinion.
That is my opinion, and that is an opinion which is acceptable in the school. I'm afraid yours, which you're saying that there's no such thing as anyone other than male or female, is not inclusive.
Scientifically, there are just two genders.
You were clearly given an opportunity not to pursue it. You chose to do so.
Yeah, because I think it's
You
silly.
chose to do so. Yes, that's the key question. You chose to do so.
Well, there you go. The teacher there was talking to a lad called Murray Allan, who I'm very, very happy to say joins me now. Murray, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Can you just explain to our viewers and our listeners exactly what happened to you and exactly what the impact of that was? Because there was a teacher there just berating you for just saying that there were two genders.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Patrick, thank you very much for having me on. Back in 2019, when I was a secondary school student, we were in the class and we were signing up for a website in one of our classes. And during the sign-up process, as the teacher is explaining how to sign up, there was the drop-down bar on sign-up pages for websites that ask you to select the gender. And when the teacher had noticed on this website specifically that there were only two gender options, male and female, he presented that as an issue to the class and began speaking about how old-fashioned that was and how problematic it was. And I didn't understand that at all, because as far as I'm concerned, there are only two genders.
So notice how the teacher's allowed to give his opinion about whether, it's right for there to only be two options on the form. But when the student responds, now there's a problem.
So I spoke up and I said, but there are only two genders. And before I knew, I was in a confrontation with the teacher where he was threatening to kick me out of the class if I wanted to continue standing behind that point. And I said, but I do stand behind that point. Next thing I knew, I was kicked from the class for about 40 minutes before the teacher came to join me. And at that point, I decided to record. Just on a whim, I recorded the interaction and it went online, and it became viral quite quickly. And obviously that's why I'm talking to you now.
So you will kick out a student from your lesson simply because they say there were only two genders. And in that exchange there that they showed, the teacher said, well, this school would agree with me, as if that gives him the right to push this on the student. And clearly, these teachers are being trained in this ideology. Definitely leads me to believe that the school has a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. And with these policies, they're basically telling the teachers to push this ideology. They're telling the teachers, giving them permission to push this ideology, knowing that they're going to be backed up by the school. And it's Murray who ends up getting expelled, when the teacher was the one who was in the wrong, because the teacher was offended at facts. The teacher was offended at facts and decided to throw the student out of his lesson because the student didn't agree. When really in school, you're supposed to learn how to disagree amicably. You're supposed to learn how to present your points effectively rather than getting offended.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what happened after that, Murray? Was there more issues at the school? Because it sounds like you're a man who refused to back down. Can I also just say, arguably the more depressing thing than this guy spouting a load of nonsense and trying to indoctrinate you with it is the fact that how easily you, at the time a child, was able to just outwit him and do him in an argument. But that's a separate issue. So what actually happened after that? You got in trouble from the school?
Yeah, so I was kicked out of the class. I had that incident with the teacher. The video went online and I was excluded from the school when the school found out about the video. And the video started making its rounds. People started, it went so far, I think, because people didn't realize the state at which this is being pressed in schools. I think it was quite shocking to people. So the video started spreading, and then I was called back into the school. And while it was sort of still in the public eye, they told me that I was going to come back to the school in 2 weeks and everything would be fine. And what they were really doing was they were trying to postpone it so that I didn't know I was going to be expelled, so that I wouldn't go and speak to, someone in the media or a journalist or something like that. And so 2 weeks later, I go back to the school. They say, actually, it's still very popular right now in the news, so you're going to come back after the summer. And really, they just waited and waited and waited until it died down in the news cycle. And then they told me I was expelled and no longer allowed to return to finish my education.
So how shady is that? That they wait until, after the summer, until things die down, and then they expel him. How shady is that? And notice how a lot of students are filming these interactions now because they feel they have to. If people don't see it on camera, they will never believe it. Even me. It's hard to believe that a kid could get into a disagreement with a teacher over whether or not there are more than two genders, over whether or not boys have penises and girls have vaginas. It's very hard to believe that this is what these teachers are berating these poor students with. So unless you see it on camera, you won't believe it. And the video evidence doesn't lie. So people are resorting to filming, and I don't blame them. So they're saying that he filmed this teacher without the teacher's consent, and that warrants him being expelled from the school. They're using the filming, as a reason to expel him. They're not addressing the fact that this exchange took place in the first place, and that this young man was thrown out of the class for simply saying that there are only two genders. That's why he was thrown out of class. Now, if you think that's okay, then there's no hope for our students. There really isn't. These students are now being penalised academically for not going along with gender ideology. Here in the US, there have been some reports of, kids claiming they were failed. They got an F because they had the nerve to say that biological men are stronger than females. These colleges, the grades are determined by the coursework you do. So to fail a paper is pretty serious. It's going to affect your overall grade. So people are failing, in college simply because they don't go along with gender ideology because of these woke professors.
I got a 0 on a project proposal in my class because I used the term biological women, which is apparently not allowed anymore. She even said it was a good project proposal, but I got a 0 because I used this term and it's exclusionary and not allowed anymore, so. And I 100% know that this is like the most biased grade ever because my project is about transgenders competing in biological women's sports. How am I supposed to do my final project if I can't use the word biological women? But that's what my project is about.
So I hope he doesn't have to deal with this in university too. But unfortunately, I think it's the same in the UK as well now, where there are a lot of woke professors and they're determining what grade you get based on whether you go along with foolishness.
Now, that's shocking. It's terrible. It should be criminal, in my view. The reason I've got you on is this video resurfaced. And this week alone, I have had numerous conversations about children getting into altercations with teachers over the same issue as you about the number of genders there are, but also over whether or not their classmates should be allowed to identify as cats, dogs, horses, dinosaurs, or in one case, the moon. Are you surprised that this is still going on? What do you think about it? And in your view, where is this coming from? Is there an indoctrination trying to take place here from the teachers, or are the teachers afraid of being called transphobic? I just want to hear from you on this.
Yeah, well, absolutely. This sort of ideology began getting pressed when I was about halfway through secondary school. That's when I really noticed it started to take up part of the curriculum in my guidance class, for example. And I never agreed with it. And I know tons of other students don't want to be being taught this, but unlike other subjects where when you don't understand something or don't buy into something, you can question it and speak about it. And obviously in an education setting, you want to be able to have open dialogue and discussion about any range of topics. But it's very clear now in the education system, there are certain woke ideologies and ideas that can't be questioned. And if questioned, you will have labels thrown on your back. And you'll be punished, and just like I was. And I've seen this much more now. And sadly, where I started experiencing this ideology in halfway through secondary school and was more able to realize it was false. Now it's being pressed from an even younger age, and kids really now have very little chance because from the ages of 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, they're being taught this is fact. And I know anything I learned at a young age in school, if someone said anything to the contrary, I would be adamant that that was right. I learned it in school. And so now when these kids that are being taught this get older and they meet people who don't feel the same way, they're instantly going to latch onto that person as a homophobe, transphobic, all these labels that these people throw at you.
Look at you, Murray, and they will look at you, and even people who believe the same thing that you do, right, will think, well, actually, right, I believe this, but is it worth me getting thrown out of school for it?
He explained that so well. The fact is, you can't question it. That goes against the very purpose of being in school, which should be to question things. It's interesting, when it comes to religion and things of that nature, you're allowed to question it. Well, this is a religion, actually. This is the new religion that has been pushed and shoved down people's throats. The fact that you can't question it is evidence of the cultish nature that this gender ideology is perpetuating and being shoved down people's throats. It's evidence of that. When in school, that is the very place where you should be encouraged to question things. Whether you have different opinions or not, you should be taught how to debate and present your points in a coherent manner. And also to listen and acknowledge the other side of the argument. That's what they should be taught in school. But for some reason, that doesn't matter when it comes to this gender ideology. They're not being assessed on their ability to argue their points, their ability to present their arguments and even acknowledge alternative views. They're being graded on whether they go along with it or not. They're being graded on whether they affirm gender ideology, whether they comply. Very, very disturbing. And people are worried. People are worried about failing at college or getting thrown out of college and affecting their future job prospects. But this young man spoke so eloquently, spoke so rationally about this situation, was very respectful. Any employer would be lucky to have him. And I find it hard to believe that this isn't the person that an employer would want over someone like the teacher who sounded irrational and, quite frankly, sounded ridiculous.
I've got to ask you, we've not got too much longer left, Murray, but can I ask, do you regret it?
No, absolutely not. You know, I said, you know, people have came to me and said, well, are you not afraid this will affect you in the future? Because this generally is the type of thing that people get cancelled for. And as far as I'm concerned, I would much rather be the type of person speaking out about the things I know to be true and to be on the right side of the argument and the debate, as opposed to just biting my lip. Maybe I wouldn't have had to face the consequences of being expelled from school and life would have ran a little bit easier. But rather than biting your lip in these instances, I think it's very important to speak out and to not become the silent majority.
Well, Murray, you are on the right side of history. You will be on the right side of history. And hopefully, in time, you will be all the stronger for this. I really appreciate you coming on and putting your face forward yet again to talk to me about this and for being so malleable as well when we had to move you around for a bit of breaking news yesterday. It's Murray Allan there, who's, I think, just, you know, fantastic lad, isn't he?
Imagine having to consider being cancelled for saying there are two genders. Imagine having to risk being berated by a person in authority who should know better, simply for saying that boys have penises, girls have vaginas. Can you imagine that we're at that point now? Absolutely ridiculous. Again, I will say, Murray presented himself impeccably there, and any employer who has an ounce of credibility would be happy to have him. So things are so crazy at this point. We now know that anything is possible when it comes to these woke teachers and woke colleges and, you know, establishments. And this is what our kids have to deal with. On top of everything else they have to deal with, they now have to worry about this. But let me know what you think. Fascinating interview. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.